Congress and DC in general has completely lost its sense of how to run things. We're in $33 trillion in debt. In the last 4 months, we've added about $500 billion every single month. Our household is in financial ruins. We have to wake up today. And electing Democrats, we know how they stand, but electing these weak Republicans that aren't bold enough and don't have a sense of urgency is only going to continue this problem.
Hi, I'm Erson Russell reporting for Costa Mesa Brief. Today we're going to be sitting down with one of our congressional candidates. He's a businessman here in California, a fifth-generation Californian. He's a family man and a man of faith, and he's been helping to create economies and jobs for working-class citizens here in Orange County. Hi there, how are you today?
Great, Erson. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're running for?
My name is Max Ukropina, and I'm running for Congress here in the 47th District. I've been born and raised here in the district in Newport, and now I live in Costa Mesa with my wife, and I'm looking to bring real leadership back to Orange County and in Washington.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What makes Max tick?
Yeah, like I said, born here in Orange County, went to Corona Moore High School, followed up at USC, and then after that I've been building mostly fintech companies, financial technology companies, helping average Americans get out of debt, save money, invest whatever they have left, and helping those hard technology companies find profitability. But now what's happened in Washington and continuing to happen has really motivated me to do something about it. I'm unhappy with the current state of affairs, and this is why I'm running for Congress.
And how do you think your success or experience in business applies to Congress or running for Congress?
Yeah, I think my background and experience and knowledge as a businessman is extremely important. Congress and DC in general has completely lost its sense of how to run things. We're currently as a country in $33 trillion in debt. And that's debt that we as citizens have to owe eventually.
Right.
And coming from a business mindset, I'm not a career politician. I know how businesses work. I know how financials are important if we want to actually be able to afford the things we want to pay for. And we need to have a business person come into Washington and make those bold decisions to get us back on track and then some. These are fixable issues, especially when it comes to the debt. I'm not going to Washington to go hang out at cocktail parties and make a name for myself there. I see an issue, I see a problem, I'm here to fix it with a solution, right? And these solutions aren't new. These solutions have existed in the past, and we need someone to go there and make those very simple decisions to get us back to where we are on a financial footing and a national security footing, immigration. There's a myriad of issues, but what gets me motivated, and my colleagues in business can tell you, is that when I see a problem, I want to fix it immediately. There's always a sense of urgency here, and I intend to bring that.
On your website, you talk about several issues that are important to your campaign. One of them is border security. And have you been to the border? What's your take on what's going on down there?
Yes, I have been to the border. I've crossed it several times over the last year. And you talk about border security. We don't have border security. Our Border Patrol are brave men and women, but they are completely understaffed, and they do not have the help and resources that they could do it, right? We do not have a proper border wall. In the last year, we've had several million crossover. I think in the entire Biden administration, I've heard it's 7 million. Some people say 10 million. In the last year, we've had 1.5 million gotaways. Those are people we were unable to ask. Who are you? Where'd you come from? What's your criminal background? Also in the last year, we've had over 50,000 people that are known as special interest aliens. Right. And these are people coming from countries that knowingly harbor terrorism. And we can say that, oh, look, it's good. We've had 169 captures of people on our terrorist watch list, right? And that's a good thing. I'm glad we captured them. but that doesn't account for now, again, those 1.5 million gotaways. And even 2 days ago, before this interview, our own Border Patrol was waving the red flag and saying, hey, there's Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad crossing over our border.
Right.
And what frightens me is that now they're waving the red flag after we've allowed millions of people to cross the border. How many are here?
Right.
And I'm not trying to be some scaremonger person. These are real numbers that our community has to be aware of. If we'd allowed in hundreds of thousands of pounds of fentanyl that kill our own people, what's to say the same border security has allowed hundreds, tens, dozens, thousands of people that are going to endanger us from a security standpoint?
So as far as the national security and these people coming across, it's creating an unsafe environment. We have State Assemblyman Dave Min, who was a big part of getting rid of the gun, shows and so forth in California. Where do you think that's going to affect us long term?
Yeah, our right to defend ourselves in our homes, our right to bear arms, is a natural right. And in Congress, I will be that advocate for the Second Amendment. I think especially here in California, our rights have been infringed by the state government. And every single time, nearly, they get slapped back by our courts to say that these are truly infringements on our rights. And in Congress, I will be that advocate for our Second Amendment so we can protect ourselves, right? Unfortunately, our state has loosened all of these laws and given criminals essentially free reign in our state to commit crimes, and we have rampant recidivism and all these things, which is not right and scary. And as you can see, our people are afraid because the people they put in power in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Sacramento don't want to protect them. So yes, in their home, that is their castle, and they should have a right to protect themselves by whatever means are necessary to protect themselves, their family, and their property. And I will be that advocate in Washington to make sure that no more draconian rules are passed at a federal level. I think it's very simple as that. We live in a dangerous state because we've been loose with our laws and criminals, and we're seeing it. It's very clear what's happening on a daily basis. Luckily, we live in Orange County, where we have a strong sheriff, a strong DA, amazing police departments, but we still have to live under Sacramento law next to a county like Los Angeles, which does not have the same values that we do. And yes, we have to rely at the end of the day our Second Amendment.
Yeah. Let's go through some of the issues that you cover on your website. Education.
Yes. I'm a public school kid. I'm a graduate of Newport-Mesa Public Schools. Go Sea Kings. And what's happened recently is that our public school system has been eroded, especially here in Orange County, where we've historically had some of the best school districts, public school districts, in the country. And you've seen over time those numbers have begun to decline. And you've seen at the same time parents' rights over how they raise their children decline very quickly. And as we look, that is in utmost importance to our future, is how we're raising and educating our kids. And our public schools currently are openly failing the basics of educating our school children. And not only that, they're putting a wedge between parent and pupil and putting the state and the school system in front of that parent-child relationship. Most of those problems need to be solved at the local school level. We need to completely remove some bad actors inside of our school districts and replace them with pro-parents, pro-student school board members. Me, as an advocate in Washington, what I can do is I can remove the Department of Education. It does not need to be there. It is not constitutional. And whatever money is left over needs to be shoved as close to the school and the student as much as possible. Right? We need to have school choice so parents can decide where their child can be educated. We need to be able to advocate for them to choose homeschooling if that's what they want. Parochial schools, private schools, whatever it is. Competition is wonderful for our schools, especially now as people whose only option is public schools, right? They can't afford private schools. They can't afford parochial schools. They can't afford to send their kids I guess, home for homeschooling. So we need to be that advocate with a strong Parental Rights Act in Congress, but also take Washington out of it. I wish I could take Sacramento out of it, but at the very least, we can take D.C. out of our schools. It does not need to be there.
What can you do for us for crime and in law enforcement here in California?
Again, a lot of the issues right now come to the real criminality of what's been instituted in Sacramento and a lot of the counties around us. And I will be that advocate for law enforcement to make sure that they have the resources and the powers at play to find the criminals and get them locked up, right? We cannot live in a free society if criminals are allowed to be free. So we have a lot of reforms that need to happen. We need to completely open up the Department of Justice at a federal level. That's what I'm looking forward to in Congress, is to use my powers to go through the DOJ and find where all this corruption is. Because there's corruption at a local level, there's corruption at a state level, but where it's really bad and we can see it is at the Federal Department of Justice. Yeah. And that's something we can do with the power of subpoena, is to find where this corruption is, bring them before Congress, which is a very scary place to be brought in front of, and demand answers and really cut that whole thing out.
Well, and justice should be blind. You know, when you mentioned the district attorney here, Todd Spitzer in Orange County, but you compare that to what's going on in Los Angeles. I mean, how do people survive in an environment where they're letting people out of jail early? They're not prosecuting them to the extent of the law. They had an officer that was shot in an assassination style, and he's only going for life in prison instead of the death penalty. How do people survive in that kind of a climate?
One of the reasons why I'm running is that the Democrats I'm running against in this race, they believe in the LA and San Francisco style policies that have really ruined my favorite American cities. And we really run a risk, and we've seen it, that if we elect those people, they're going to go to Washington, export those LA, San Francisco style policies, and then import it right back into our face. And we have to really push these corrupt ideas out of our conversation, let alone out of our houses of government.
Energy policy. So, California is going to get rid of its last nuclear energy plant, El Diablo Canyon. They want to have everyone running on electric cars at some point, and by 2035 or something in the future. As a congressman, you can't directly, obviously, affect legislature for California, but what can you do for the nation to help with our energy policies and our energy stability?
California's energy policies are a complete disgrace. California has been blessed with some of the greatest natural resources the world over. We sit on some of the largest, depending on who you ask, the largest petroleum and natural gas resources underneath our Monterey Shale and everywhere else. We used to be a top producer of nuclear energy. We used to be a top producer of hydroelectric power, all these things. And what have we done is we've created, instead of a state of abundance, we've created a state of scarcity, where our power costs and our energy costs are some of the highest in the nation. And that is all hurting the average consumer. Or not the average consumer, every single consumer. And so I think we're going to wake up soon, because we're going to be at a situation where we're going to be so pushed into these, wind and solar, which cannot scale out, right? We've made these promises as a state to be 100% electric vehicle, 100% renewable. And I'm a business guy. I look at the numbers, and it is impossible for us to get there. And not only is it impossible for us to get there, the only way for us to get there, we have to rely on China, because we're not willing to mine the resources that we need to hit those goals. Right. So at the very least, we should be opening up our resources so we can have homegrown resources to get there. But when it comes down to that abundance and scarcity, a free, wealthy society has always been led by low energy costs. Yep. If you want to put people into poverty, you make high energy costs. We're seeing it today. When I talk to my friends and neighbors, they go, Max, for the first time in my adult life, I filled my gas tank halfway because I had to make a decision on, am I going to have a normal grocery run or am I going to have a full tank of gas, right? And so as gas gets more and more expensive, as our electric costs at home get more and more expensive, as our water costs get more and more expensive, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of policies do we want? And when I go to Washington, of course, this directly affects Californians. But as a nation, we need to be the number one producer. There's no question we can be number one producer of everything. We should be opening up nuclear power plants as often as possible, more hydroelectric, more clean gas, clean coal, everything. Why? Because in order to have a free, prosperous state, in order for normal Americans to be able to afford a wonderful lifestyle, we cannot have expensive energy. We have to be cheap. And I am definitely an extremist in this because we have to have cheap energy. And right now, our national policies with the Biden administration and with their Sacramento policies are putting us into absolute ruin where things are getting out of hand cost-wise. And we need to drill more and build more because that's the only answer.
Well, and you said, I mean, energy doesn't affect, our economy, inflation, and all those things. And so let's go into, just inflation and the cost of living, that what's drastically changed for Americans in just a few short years of President Biden being in office.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. We're in $33 trillion in debt, right?
First time in our history.
First time in our history. We're, if you round up, we're at $34 trillion. And in the last 4 months, we've added about $500 billion every single month to our debt, and that's not going to stop. And that's with current interest rates. And you take a step back and realize we're spending more on our interest payments than we are on our defense budget, right? And Congress sees us as this credit card they can keep adding to, because there is a widely held belief in Washington, D.C. that we can continue to borrow into infinity and beyond. But that's just not the case. We can't afford it anymore. We have to make these big cuts as soon as possible in terms of our spending because we won't be able to be around as a nation if we can't afford the interest, which we can't right now. Right. So, me as a business guy, I look at this and I look at what the Democrats and a lot of these weak Republicans have done. Is they've gotten this to this. We can't just blame the Democrats. We have to blame these complacent Republicans that just believe in, a cut here, a cut there. That time is over. Their complacency is complicit with financial ruin. And this is the number one driver for me as a business guy, let alone the border and all these other issues, is we can't afford to fix the rest if we can't afford our own budget. Right. So we can't go to Washington and be like, I'm going to make some slices here. We need to make huge cuts, remove entire departments that are unconstitutional, remove entire departments that are wasteful. We need to audit every single department as constantly as possible. Every single bill that we pass has to be audited to see how it was spent. Our household is in financial ruins. We have to wake up today. And electing Democrats, we know how they stand, but electing these weak Republicans that aren't bold enough and don't have a sense of urgency is only going to continue this problem.
Right. You touched on national debt. It's highest that it's been, getting to the point almost unsustainable, just paying our interest alone. What can you do going in as a congressman to bring in and rein in the runaway spending, the policies, the omnibus bills? They're making some attempts with a few there, but they need another handful of you to go in there and really make the changes.
Totally. And this is what excites me about getting to Washington, is because I'm coming there from a point of only running businesses, right? And knowing that when times are tough, you got to cut back. And that's okay. And yeah, it's ugly, whatever, but the American people are relying us to keep their financial house in order because they're the taxpayer. Yep. And I have no problem going in there and making those very difficult decisions of removing massive line items. Again, we have to cut out massive swaths of our federal government if we want to even begin to talk about spending more, right? It is put us in a really bad financial situation. We need to cut out three-letter organizations in terms of different departments. And if we're going to ask the American people to have austerity, we have to have massive austerity for the federal government. And yeah, does that mean that the wealth inside the Beltway is going to get a little smaller? Fine. The American people deserve more, and we're going to have to afford less.
Sure. And would you vote for more money going to Ukraine if you were elected to Congress?
We can't afford it. So I think once we lock down our border, then we can start discussing these things.
All right, well, let's touch on a couple of the more controversial topics out there. Election integrity has become, oddly enough, a controversial thing to care about the security or the accountability of our elections. And so what's your position on election integrity? What are some of the laws or the ways that Congress can possibly influence that based on what we've seen over the last few years?
Right. And I think it's important when you talk about election integrity, right? You have this swell of people that are, causing a storm and saying, I don't trust the elections anymore. That, for me, is enough to take action. The fact that you have a large percentage, maybe even a majority of people that don't trust our elections, as an elected official, they need to take action and make sure we have trust, integrity back in how we run elections. And there's a lot of simple things that we can do that are popular on both sides and in the middle. We need to have basic voter ID laws, right? And the people that don't like voter ID laws, doesn't make any sense. They're very popular. And if we need to give people more IDs, we can talk of Sacramento. They give out IDs to anybody. So we need to reduce the number of ballots that go to people that don't exist. I'm a data guy, right? And I look at the data that's been provided to me on how our elections are run. And all I see from a technology perspective is the number of open holes that can be used for potential fraud. Not even the evidence that's been brought before me, but just the opportunities for bad actors to go in there and rig the elections, right? That should be enough for us to change how we run elections. Yeah.
So you're a tech guy and a data guy.
Yeah.
And so if it's found that when Americans felt that the voting systems were the most secure, happened to be when really technology wasn't involved in our election systems, how do you weigh those two conflicting belief systems? That a paper ballot system, no machines, paper poll books, vote at a local precinct, voter ID. How do Americans come to the middle of understanding technology has a place, but it may not be ideal for our election systems?
Yeah, I think we're learning this as a society right now. I love technology. I use it in every single moment of my life, and for the most part, it's improved it. Obviously, there's some things that have taken away a little bit. But I think we need to focus on that, right? The vulnerabilities we have by relying so much on technology takes us away from a normal, fair, and trustworthy election where there's full custody, there's full paper trail, right? I mean, I'm running for Congress. I want to make sure that every Democrat that votes against me is counted, right? And, of course, people that want to vote for me counted too. And so I think it's not a matter of do we want more technology or not. It doesn't matter. We just want elections that everyone can trust and everyone has a view into, so we don't have to have this debate again.
Right.
I think that's the one thing that's, people on the right and the left, they're sick and tired of us having these, the elections are fair, they're not, they're stolen, you're an election denier. And why don't we just come together and say, let's have an election system where we don't have to have a debate, where it's no longer political to talk about how elections are run, and let's just have elections. It's very simple.
And what's your position on what's happening with the transgender movement and the laws that are being passed in California to possibly separate kids from their parents? All these things that are happening there.
What adults want to do in their free time does not affect me. But when you're talking about a very malleable child, that's a totally different story, and we have to protect them. So what's happening in Sacramento is truly criminal and bonkers. It doesn't make any sense. If I had told you 10 years ago or 5 years ago this has happened, you told me that would be nuts. But it's very real, and the good thing is the pendulum is swinging back in our way of normal common sense. And I'm excited about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie Sounds of Freedom?
My wife and I saw Sound of Freedom, and it was awful. It was a wonderful movie that I don't want to see again, because the imagery and the storytelling should really wake you up. And as someone that knew that child trafficking, sex trafficking was happening was one thing, but to see it on the silver screen was beyond frightening. And we really need to stop this. The fact that, we fought an entire civil war against ourselves to outlaw slavery, and yet it exists today around the world at greater numbers, and in our beautiful United States, should really wake us up. And we need to strengthen our country to stop all this sex trafficking. Yes, it stops at the border here, but we need to strengthen our laws to scare people from doing this. And we need to throw these people that are willing to traffic kids or endanger children, we need to lock them up and throw away the key. Right. These are truly evil people, and I'm glad that it is getting more attention. But we need policymakers in Washington and at the state and local level to do something about this. We have slavery in our times.
So you're not running by yourself for Congress.
No.
You've got some competition out there. Tell us a little bit about who you're running against and what makes you stand apart.
Yeah, right now, running against one main Democrat, Senator Dave Min. He currently represents about 80% of the district. He's been endorsed by the incumbent, which is Katie Porter. As you can see in his voting in Sacramento, he's a complete leftist who does not believe in any of the principles we believe in here. He's against local control. He wants bigger government and does not like the values of Orange County. And I wish he was not in the State House, and I think it would be a very dangerous thing to have him in Washington representing us.
Okay, and how about your Republican competition?
Yes, so I'm running against Scott Baugh. He's the other Republican candidate running. This is his third, maybe fourth time running for Congress unsuccessfully. He's been in Orange County politics for about 25 years. He was in elected office over 20 years ago. He's been in this county party for a while. He has continued to run and has not won. I'm not a career politician. I come with a clean slate to get stuff done with a sense of urgency, which the other candidates do not have.
Last thing, look into the camera. Tell us why we should vote for you.
I'm running for U.S. Congress to bring real leadership to Washington. I am motivated by what's happening on a daily basis in D.C. that is continuing to ruin our status quo. We need to take bold stands today and tomorrow to make this country wonderful and make Orange County the best place it is. Right now, we're not being represented properly by Democrats and Republicans. I'm willing to be that bold person to make those drastic decisions that need to be made to get us back on the right track. I love this country. I love Orange County. My name is Max Ukropina, and I would love your support. Go to maxforoc.com to learn more, donate, volunteer, learn more about me. Thanks, Urson.
Max, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Of course.